I'm 32, male, and I work as a project manager in a mid-sized tech company. I've been with this company for nearly a decade, working my way up from an entry-level position. It's a tough industry, competitive, and everyone is always looking for the next big break. For me, that next step was a senior manager position, a promotion that I had been aiming for years. I'd put in the hours, delivered results, and built strong relationships with clients. But here's the thing, I didn't expect the competition to come from my own brother. My brother, let's call him R, is 30, and we've always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, he was the golden child, charismatic, good-looking, and effortlessly charming. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one, the one who worked hard but never really stood out. I was used to getting what he wanted, and our parents often overlooked his faults because, well, that's just how R is. When I joined my company 2 years ago, I wasn't thrilled. He had been floundering for years, jumping from job to job, always blaming his bosses or office politics for his failures. But I put my reservations aside and even vouched for him when he applied. I wanted to be supportive, and I believed that he might finally take his career seriously. That was a mistake. The promotion was announced internally 6 months ago. It wasn't a secret that I was the frontrunner. My track record spoke for itself, and my manager had hinted as much in our one-on-ones. I was thrilled but cautious. This promotion meant more responsibility, more visibility, and a significant pay bump. I'd been working tirelessly, pulling late nights, and ensuring everything was perfect. Little did I know, R had other plans. It started small. R would casually forget to forward me important emails or exclude me from meetings he scheduled. When I confronted him, he laughed it off, saying, "You're just paranoid, man. Relax." I brushed it aside, thinking it was unintentional. After all, he was my brother. Then things escalated. One day, a critical report I had been working on for weeks went missing from our shared drive. I was furious. I confronted IT, and they confirmed it had been deleted from the system entirely. Luckily, I had a backup on my personal drive. I stayed up all night recreating it, ensuring it was ready for the client presentation the next morning. I mentioned this incident to R, half expecting some sympathy, but he shrugged and said, "Maybe you should organize your files better." I didn't want to believe he was involved, but the timing was suspicious. A few weeks later, during a team meeting, R brought up a project I had spearheaded, except he presented it as his idea. I sat there, stunned, as he confidently took credit for my work. My manager looked impressed, and before I could interject, R wrapped it up with a smug smile and moved on. After the meeting, I confronted him in private. "What the hell was that?" I demanded. R leaned against the wall, smirking. "Relax, big bro. It's all teamwork, right? You'll still get credit in the end." I was seething, but I couldn't prove anything without sounding petty. I decided to focus on my work, hoping it would speak for itself. But it wasn't done. One Friday afternoon, my manager called me into his office. He looked concerned and held a printed email. "I received this from a client," he said. "They're unhappy with your performance on the last project." I was blindsided. I had poured my heart into that project, and the client had seemed satisfied during our last check-in. I asked to see the email. It was filled with complaints, sloppy work, missed deadlines, poor communication. But something about the language felt off. It didn't sound like the client at all. "I'll look into this," I told my manager, keeping my voice steady. Inside, I was boiling. That night, I went through every correspondence I had with the client. I found nothing to suggest they were unhappy. I even called my main contact, who was confused and assured me everything was fine. That's when it hit me. The email was fake. I couldn't prove it yet, but I had a gut feeling R was behind it. He was the only one who stood to gain from discrediting me. I decided it was time to fight back. Over the next few weeks, I started documenting everything. Every suspicious incident, every missing file, every undermining comment. I even set up monitoring on shared drives to track file changes. I kept my head down, acting as if I didn't suspect a thing, while R continued his antics. Then I hit the jackpot. One morning, I checked the drive logs and found that R had accessed my private project folder late at night. The same folder where I stored drafts of upcoming presentations. I cross-checked the timestamps and realized he had copied files the night before a major client pitch, one that I wasn't invited to. I reached out to IT, explaining the situation, and they confirmed his activity on the server. But the real turning point came when I found an email draft in the trash folder of his work account. It was addressed to my manager, mimicking the client style, and contained complaints about my performance. My hands were shaking as I took screenshots and forwarded everything to my personal email. This was the proof I needed. I scheduled a meeting with HR and my manager. I presented all the evidence, the file logs, the email draft, and even a timeline of R's actions. They were shocked but promised to investigate. Over the next week, HR interviewed everyone on the team, including R. He denied everything, of course, but the evidence was damning. 2 weeks later, R was fired for misconduct. He didn't take it well. He showed up at my apartment, yelling and accusing me of ruining his career. "You're my brother. How could you do this to me?" he shouted. I stood my ground. "No, R. You did this to yourself. You tried to sabotage me, and you got caught. Don't blame me for your actions." He stormed off, and we haven't spoken since. The promotion? I got it, but it felt bittersweet. I had worked so hard for it, but the fallout with her left a lingering bitterness. Our parents tried to mediate, calling me cold and unforgiving, but I refused to back down. R's entitlement had gone unchecked for too long, and it was time he faced the consequences. After the dust settled, I tried to focus on my new responsibilities. The senior manager role came with more pressure, but it was rewarding to finally get the recognition I had worked for. However, the fallout with her wasn't over. My parents weren't letting it go. "You should have handled it differently," my mom said one evening when I visited for dinner. "Your brothers. Family comes first. Family doesn't sabotage your career, Mom." I shot back, trying to keep my voice even. "You think I wanted this to happen?" He forced my hand. "He's just going through a rough patch," my dad chimed in. "You should have talked to him instead of going to HR." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I did talk to him multiple times. He lied to my face, stole my work, and tried to ruin my reputation. What was I supposed to do? Let him destroy everything I've built? They didn't have an answer to that. Instead, they changed the subject, as they always did when R's behavior came up. For years, they had enabled him, excusing every bad decision, every failure, and every act of selfishness. I had hoped that this time, they'd finally see him for who he was. But no. To them, he was still the golden child, the victim, the one who could do no wrong. I left that night feeling more alone than ever. A few months passed, and I started hearing whispers about R. Apparently, he was struggling to find a new job. Word had gotten around about why he was fired, and no one in our industry wanted to touch him. At first, I felt a pang of guilt, but then I remembered everything he had done, the lies, the sabotage, the arrogance. He wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry he got caught. Still, the fallout weighed on me. I kept asking myself if I could have handled things differently. Maybe if I had confronted him more aggressively or involved HR earlier, it wouldn't have escalated so far. But then I'd think about that fake email, the stolen files, and the smug way he dismissed my concerns. No, R had made his choices. He thought he could get away with it, and he was wrong. One evening, I got a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before picking up. "Hello, it's me," R said. His voice was flat, almost defeated. I didn't say anything, waiting for him to continue. "Look, I need your help," he finally said. "I can't find a job. No one will hire me. You got connections. Can you put in a word for me?" I laughed bitterly, the sound surprising even me. "You got to be kidding. I'm serious, man. I'm in a bad spot. I know I messed up, okay? But I'm your brother. Can't you let this go? Let this go." I repeated, my voice rising. "Do you even hear yourself? You tried to ruin my career, and now you want me to help you? Why should I?" "Because I'm family," he said, as if that explained everything. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my anger in check. "Our family doesn't do what you did. You didn't just mess up. You went out of your way to sabotage me. You lied, you stole, and you didn't care about the consequences. Now you want me to clean up your mess? No. You need to face the consequences of your actions." He started to argue, but I cut him off. "This conversation is over. Don't call me again." I hung up, my hands shaking. I felt a mix of anger, relief, and sadness. Part of me wanted to help him, to believe that he could change. But I knew better. I wasn't looking for redemption. He was looking for a way out of the hole he had dug himself into. And I wasn't going to be his lifeline. Over time, I stopped hearing about her altogether. My parents occasionally brought him up, but I made it clear that I didn't want to talk about him. I focused on my work, my friends, and my own life. The promotion turned out to be everything I had hoped for, and I threw myself into new projects with a renewed sense of purpose. Every now and then, I'd think about R and wonder if he'd ever learn from his mistakes. Maybe he would, or maybe he'd find someone else to blame, as he always had. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. Looking back, I don't regret how I handled things. Sometimes doing the right thing means making hard choices, even if it costs you. Or taught me that family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by trust, respect, and accountability. And if someone, family or not, betrays you, you have every right to stand up for yourself. So, if you've ever had to deal with someone entitled or manipulative, remember this. You don't owe them anything. Stand your ground. Fight for what's right. And don't let anyone dim your light, no matter who they are. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe. Or don't. But if your brother tries to sabotage you, you'll wish you had.